start on here. As a little example of that, what we can try out is, or what we should be trying out later on, is the Kinect calibration, Kinect projector calibration, which actually makes use of quite some extensions, and we can see how why it makes sense to actually use extensions in that context. Yeah, and this is kind of a little introduction then to what you can do with. It falls, I guess, into the realm of projection mapping. So we'll do this as a little exercise, or more of a show and tell. And I'll also show you the other tools that are available for projection mapping, which is CamSnapper, where you calibrate the projector to a known 3D object. And the other one, KantanMapper, which is more of you draw a rectangle or you draw a shape and you put a image on it. So we'll do that. And all right. And the last thing I meant to show was just connecting devices like Leap Motion or MIDI devices, or how to basically work with remote control or controlling Touch Designer with external devices. So, oh, and if we have time, I have one project here which is using C++, like a custom operator. And I could just give you a quick overview of how you could run that, how you could compile it, basically. So first things first, with extending Touch Designer, yeah, we did include a while ago with Touch Designer 88, we started using Python, and this has built out in quite a big way. Eventually, if you even if you look at the palette, let's say we go to tools and we pull out the ArcBall camera that we used yesterday. If you go inside there and look at the camera one, and the camera one has two things. One is these custom parameters. And the other thing, if you go to the extensions page, you can see here a strange string me.mod extension 1 arcball extension me. Now, what does that all mean? Basically, it means that inside the arcball, there is an operator here called extension 1 arcball extension that I'll show you how those are created. And if I edit that, then you can see that this is actually a Python class here. So we wrote a little Python class, especially for this camera, to allow the manipulation of this camera in from a panel. So to do all the rotating, panning, zooming. And you can see that there's a class name, and there is some function names, and the interesting part about this is that especially those function names that start with a capital letter, like start transform here or transform reset, they're actually available from the outside. They're promoted functions. So you can run those from, like even from the text port. You can now say a equals, I'll just set a variable to my operator here. Cam1. And now I can say a dot reset. Given, for example, that I changed the camera here, if I call a dot reset from the outside, it's resetting the camera. Now, this is not default functionality of the camera itself. It's added functionality, but it looks like as if it's available by default. So if you want to create such an extension, how would that work? And maybe we can create a very simple extension that just outputs a string, or maybe changes the background of this container. Let's do that actually. So place down a container component. And to add an extension, the easy way is to right-click onto the container component and pick Customize Components, which should bring up this little dialog here, Component Editor, which is the place where you add custom parameters, but also extension code. So click on the little extension code menu down here, and currently you have the ability to add 4 extensions of your own. So let's add an extension here. We'll call this extension Click Me, and there's no particular naming convention here. It's just I usually use capital letters and then camel case, and then hit Add. And now you've got a couple different options. For now, just use standard. And this will, then change a little bit. Now you have an Edit, Init, and Delete button here. So click the Edit button, and up comes either like a text editor for you, or something. And I'll just go through a couple of these things here. So you see, basically for you, it was a class was defined with the name that you specified. And here for me, it's class ClickMe. And you can add a description here, which is always nice for people so they know what you're doing. This extension changes the background of the container. And then there's an init function, and these inits are always run when the class is initiated. So a couple variables are being set, like self.ownerComp is basically the address inside Touch Designer of the component that has this class. So when the cooking in Touch, it depends a little bit on the cooking in Touch Designer. So if the node is required by something, then the extension is initiated. Then it's built up,
If it's good, and then throughout the whole session, it's like initialized each time, or just once?
Yeah, just once, exactly.
Owner.comp, is it like optional check?
Yeah, it's the op itself. And then you have this idea of attributes here, with attributes that are available now to the whole class, and promoted attributes which are available to the class but also are available from the outside. So if you have self.b here equals 1, that means actually that, similar to promoted functions, my a equals up, let me just set this to container 1. If I type a.capital B, it will return 1 because that attribute is promoted. A.A wouldn't work.
How do I open this export?
Oh, sorry, the text port you can open with Alt-T. Alt-T or Dialogs text port.
Only capital letters,
Yeah. Yep. That's our rule. Yep. And right after we have this other thing here, which is properties. And properties have this special thing that you can make them read-only, so that you cannot change them from the outside. You can make them dependable, and that's perhaps the biggest thing. Now, dependable means that I could, for example, say, I could make a little container or a little constant job here where I reference this a dot b, or this attribute b. So up container 1 dot b, and I get a 1 here, and that's fine. But when I update the attribute inside my class, that doesn't necessarily update, or that wouldn't tell this operator, this job, to change the value of this attribute. It's just not being pushed to cook, basically. This wouldn't change. You would have to force cook it for it to actually change. And therefore, we have these other things called properties, which are dependable, and those definitely will update when you change, like they cause a cook in the network, basically. Anything that references them is being cooked if the value changes. Right, I guess I could show it this way. A dot b equals 2. I don't get an update here. But if I reference this property, which is called my property, and now I update this, a dot my property equals 2, the job update.
So the microproperty string is the like the replace one in the express. Which because we don't define the microproperty before in the so there's just A and B properties, and the microproperty is creating.
It's created, yeah.
But what's the difference between like the capital B and microproperty?
B is just an attribute, so it's not dependable.
It cannot be dependable.
Cannot be dependable. And yeah, if you need a dependable one, you have to do this create property thing, the full function.
Why could I just only always say self dot anything? Why do I have to create a property?
The property only if it needs to be dependable. Like, or do you mean by name, or? I mean, you could call this anything.
But also with the self dot you can.
Oh right, so the self you need because the self is.
Yeah, I know this. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
But you can also say instead of self dot agree, you can also say self dot my philosophy.
Right. Yeah. In if like if you would do that here, self dot my property equals A or something, then surely this would be an attribute, but it would not be a property which is dependable. It's the whole thing about it's the whole thing basically is that from the outside, let's try this here, 10, I just give this a new name. I'll call this one dependable and save it. So now I have an attribute called my property, and I have a property called dependable. The naming is a little bit bad here. So my property now is 10, has the value of 10. And if I change the value of this attribute, my property, to something else, to 20, it definitely has the value 20, but I reference it on the outside here. Here I look at op container 1, my property,
It's not updated.
and it's not updating.
I see.
So if I though do a dot dependable in here, dependable,
Okay, so you can.
dependable. Now my property, which is called dependable, I can update, and the operator updates as well.
Okay, thank you.
That's the main
That's
difference.
great. That's just a hidden feature. I haven't even used it.
Yeah, it's this whole extensions thing. Quite useful when you build bigger systems, but yeah, it's
You
good,
would have
good to know
saved
about.
me a lot of work if I knew it before.
No. Never too late. And then the next thing, we have these stored items, and it says what it means basically. Those are persistent across saves and reinitializations. So while your properties and your attributes that you create here, when you restart touch, they're going to be set to the value again that you give them here in the init function. So they will be reset every time you restart touch. While these stored items, you can actually save across. If you restart touch or you reinitialize this operator, then it still would, these values would stay the way they were last when you changed them. And then we have two different functions here. One here is called myFunction with a small, starting with a small letter. Those are not promoted. That means they cannot be called directly from the outside. While these promoted functions here, they can again be called directly. So we can try that. A dot, what is it called? I already forgot. Promoted function. And it wants a value, so I can give it hello here. And it outputs a little debug string saying hello and tells me where this was called from.
And what's the difference between my function and promoted function? I can see it's actually
Yeah.
the same.
So if you try to call my function here from the text port, my function, it will tell you that this container comp doesn't have a function called my function. Because my function, if a function starts with a small letter, then it's not promoted, so it's not accessible from the outside directly.
But if you open your Sublime text again,
Mm-hmm.
I should just look at it. My function and promoted function, that's actually the same.
Yeah, but it's just a template. You can do write anything in there.
And promoted function starts with a capital, and my function with a little m.
Okay, that's the only thing.
So if I change my function to a capital M, and now call this with a capital M, now it's actually running it. Because capital functions with capital letters are promoted. Starting with small letters, they're not promoted, so they're only directly callable from the inside. You can still call these functions, but you have to do, I always forget, a dot, I guess the extension name, a dot ext dot click me dot my function here. Yeah. So you can still call my function, but you have to do this whole ext dot class name dot function name. Like you have to go be very specific about getting there. It's kind of like you wanna hide it a little bit, basically from the outside. Then
accessible only from the instance, just inside the actual class code, or does it mean
yeah.
I call the function from, for instance, the container node itself?
Sorry, by the function itself. Yeah. So the promoted function here could be calling self.myfunction.
Oh, I just thought that might be
Yeah.
a private function could just be called from the container node containing the extension.
Yep. Dum-dum-dum. Now, one thing that really helps with these, another thing that really helps with accessing these functions, because you would build a container with functionality in it, and perhaps inside this container is more subcontainers, like you have a base container in here that does where you have some logic in it, and a couple other UI panel containers with UI, and all of them you would structure it such that all of them would want to use the extension from their parent, from container 1. And to help you with that, you can go on the comment page and give this whole thing a parent shortcut. So parent shortcut, let's just call this my container. So now you can get to container 1 no matter where it is. Like you can move it around, and you can and I'm just gonna give them some different names here. My UI. If I now need to access these functions from ClickMe, way from below, like, yeah, I can still do that by, like, let's say I want to run a script here, and so I'm just going to place a text dot, and in this text dot, now I already forgot what I called this. My container. So I'm way down project 1, container 1, my UI, and I want to call the functions that are on container 1. I can do this now by saying parent dot, then my parent shortcut name, my container dot, and the promoted function was my function. And I give it a string. Still works. And if I run this script, you can execute Python scripts that you wrote in TextDot by just right-clicking on them and say run script. Then I get an object error because it says there's no my function. Oh, it's called promoted function, sorry. Promoted function. Run. And it's running that function. Although I'm just accessing this via parent my container without having to actually specify the path to the object itself. And the nice part about this well is that this is completely movable. So here I have my UI, I'll delete it and I'll go just into my functionality 1 container and paste it here. So I'm a way different path now. I can still run it. So it becomes very much more flexible, basically.
So can you put the extension to any operator to the container, also to the base, also to jobs and whatever?
Extensions are only available for components.
Okay.
Any component, though, yeah. That is, yeah, any component can have an extension.
Is there a general Python reference?
Sorry, a
Is
general.
there a general Python Python reference? Python API?
Per operator, basically, or you mean?
Well, if I want to control touch designer via Python from the textbox.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even stuff like that OP parentheses work. That's the way implemented right in Houdini is the different things. So
Right.
you have general Python.
It's all, yeah, it's all in the. I mean, everything has a. You can access. You can access the help for every operator via the text port on one hand, and the other way would be just clicking on the operator help, the Python operator help here, to bring up the wiki, and in the wiki you can browse the whole Python tree by clicking on the left menu here onto Python, and there you find the whole listing. Yeah.
Because I was asking for non-operator specific stuff, and probably can control the timeline with Python.
Yeah, it's yeah, you can do all the same things. Also, if you wanna, somebody built Mario Brothers in with operators in side effect in Houdini, because you can animate operator positions.
Yeah.
So same thing in Touch, basically. Yeah.
And so that's the TD module probably?
Yeah, the TD module is the main thing, but every, like, if you, for example, look at the op class, then every op has,
And then there's a project class.
yeah, every op has a position in the pane and the size and things like that. So, and a lot of that is writable, so you can change quite a bit of things here. Okay. Where are we with that? Yes. Another way to access these, and this is a little bit more dangerous in a way, like you gotta be careful with using those. There's also the global op shortcut. So the parent shortcut, the parent is in the name because you can access it from the inside. So if you go, if you're anywhere, we defined this parent shortcut on container 1, in project 1. So now anywhere inside container 1, for example, container 1 my functionality 1 my UI, you can access container 1 via this parent shortcut. But if I'm outside or beside container 1 here, I cannot get to it anymore. If I try to reach this container, parent dot my container, this will not evaluate. This doesn't work. But it does work from inside my container, from inside container 1 here. So if you come across the need that you need access to a component from anywhere inside your network, then you can use these global op shortcuts. So you could say, I'll just call this see me from anywhere. And the to get to this, you would not use parent, but you would use op dot see me from anywhere. And now you can access that container from anywhere. The problem with this is that now you have to watch out. You cannot have two components with the same global op shortcut name because, well, they are unique. The names are unique. So if I copy and paste this, you're going to get a warning saying multiple defined shortcuts here. If you use them, only very specific things where you really need it. Right. Yeah. I'm not sure. Like Houdini doesn't have things like replicators, a replicator component, for example. A replicator is an interesting concept where if you need to create a bunch of operators, like let's say you need a various amount of buttons, and that changes depending on an input table from some source. So what the replicator does is it takes the template table and the master operand, and then depending on the size of the table, it creates the operators for you.
No, you don't have that. I mean, you could do it in Python first.
Right.
Yeah.
So what now happens is that you create all these operators, and perhaps the operators even, we have this other concept of cloning, so that you can clone operators from sources, but they can be variable, so you can, for every replicated operator, it can clone from a different source. And then it becomes really important that all of them, like you just create a massive network there, and it becomes important that you can reference certain things without having to know the path, basically.
Cloning is, so it's a reference, but it really clones the whole, let's say we have defined an operator in a container with shops, whatever in it, and then we can clone this asset container, so we have a duplicate in another place that has exactly the same functionality, right?
Yeah. So, for example, if I clone this button 1 with itself, and I use it as the master for this replicator, now when I create more of these buttons, these are all cloned to button 1, and this meaning if I go into button 1 and change the background color, for example, now all of them have
but
the...
that's a concept that's missing in Houdini, and I watch it all the time, because I mean you can reference an operator, but then it's just a reference, meaning basically all the parameters have references in them,
Right.
but not the actual content is cloned.
Yeah.
And the only way around it is to make an actual asset that you, an operator type library that you save to this.
Oh, okay.
Or you can save it with a project file, but yeah, it's not that you can find one operator and just say, okay, let's clone it, let's use it in another place, and you do need that a lot actually.
Right, yeah.
I wish very much that they have this concept.
Yeah, it's you have to be a little bit careful because animation will be lost unless you set this clone immune flag. There's a clone immune which keeps it from then inside the clone it becomes unique, basically.
Yeah, because then you have the whole flexibility to customize the clone.
If you customize the clone, I use something like customized components, get variables there, and accessing them with a parameter job, and then you can have your unique features for any clone.
Yeah.
I use this feature for my diploma project in GoForIt. It is every person has an own component, and inside the component you get the position of the head, and whatever has to be done is another person to close. Am I outside of the area? Is another person close enough, for example, and the other way around? And this is all done in a separate component. But I decided not to use the replicator, but just parenting, because I have an output. And if I do significant changes for the master operator, for a replicator, for any reason, I have to hit the update button. And then all my outputs will disappear.
Yeah, if you
but
connect
this
them.
is not the case if I do it with the original parenting.
Right.
When I can update what I want to do, but
it becomes funny if you start using these outputs here, like if you do things like this, because now for the replicator you would have to script either something for every new replicant to be attached to the merge or something.
Yes, there is a script about it.
We do have the you often then try to work around it basically, so that you can still keep it, so that how can you build your network so that you don't have to connect it basically. We go long ways trying to work around that problem.
I had this problem before, and then I wanted to have to design I wanted to have a connection to another node by Python, and then change it again. This was the night I did it in July. So I used to the night before we had to realize it in the stage. This was a bit stressful, but from there I know it. I should know it actually.
Yeah.
Can you quickly show how you create a clone again? So if I want to clone a component, for instance, a container component?
Yeah. It's literally, if you have a container and you want to create, what I often do is I just specify the clone master on the clone master itself. So if this is my clone master, then in here I'll just say clone master. So now if I make a copy of this, it automatically clones from the clone master.
So basically on the master itself it doesn't matter, and
yeah. If it's self-referencing on the master.
Yeah.
I mean, you get to interesting things like, as I said, with the a good example of replicants and cloning would be Kantan mapper. Okay, so in Kantan Mapper, the whole process so in Kantan Mapper I can create these shapes basically, and these shapes can be inside of folders. So I can create a new folder here, and now inside the folder I can create a different shape here. Okay. So now the freeform shape is inside this group, the rectangle is outside of it, and there's another group here. Yeah, so a couple folders. And inside here, the folder structure is actually replicated by I have to do something with this recording device. There we go. There's one container, one geometry container, which holds all of the shapes. So for example, item 1, I guess, is my rectangle. Yeah, if I turn the render flag off. Item 2 is this whole group with freeform. Actually, just to make this more shape in here. Okay. So item 2 is the small rectangle in the free here. And you can see that these things are created with a replicator here. And then they have the clone master set by a little Python string, so that every order can be cloned from somewhere else. So I replicate the geo component, that's the common thing, but then I clone every geo component from a different source so that it can be a folder, it can be a rectangle, or it can be a freeform shape. So you can get really creative by not just replicating the same thing, but replicating the same thing and then cloning from different places, making it a different thing.
Is this more when you create a shape, you said now you create these shape containers with replicators. Is this the more common workflow, or like, I don't know, if I would do something like this in Houdini, I would do it with Python, I guess, to create a new container or something like this. Is it the common way to work with replicators?
I mean, it's common for me. The nice thing is that what I can do is if I need to move a shape, for example, from one group to another here, I can read the definition of the shape because I saved it in a nice way, and then I just have to change one table, the tree definition, and by changing the table, it removes the geometry component and it creates it somewhere else, clone it properly, and I don't have to worry about doing any of that. Yeah. So.
All of these tools in the sense?
Not all of them, but I built Kantan. Yeah. Yeah. Which needs more somebody else to work on full time. Okay, what else about you can clone only components. Yeah.
So I don't know if I want to clone into a reference or the parameters or...
Yeah, or put them into a component. Yeah.
Yeah, you can just do if you want to clone shop, I guess you can do a component in and out shop, and then just do your functionality, and then so you get revenue.
yeah, you can replicate any. Replication works with any node type.
Yeah.
It would be so cool moving this concept. I really think you should do an exchange weekend or something with side effects.
Let's see what we can exchange. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Absolutely one way.
Okay. Let me just remove this here. So, right. So if you want to, what I didn't talk about is much how to actually now, you have your extension set, and perhaps you want to run a function in that extension. And you could do this from parameters, for example, like have a click or something that changes the, that calls the function. So how we do this? Well, first we do create on the component where we have the extension in. We have to create a little button that, and to do this, you would right-click onto the component, say Customize Component, create a new page, more parameters, and then on this new page, all the customer pages are always one row below the build address. And then here you can choose to build a pulse button, for example. And I'll call this run function. And I get my run function pulse button here. Which now I can use to, going on into the inside of my container. I'm going to remove this. I want to call my promoted function when clicking the button. And we dots that help you with this. Especially in this case, it's the parameter execute. So when you look at the dot family, you can find a lot of operators that end by the name of execute, job execute, dot execute, panel execute, op execute. There's parameter execute, and I think there's just an execute as well. Yes. So all of these executes, let's just put down a parameter execute. They are essentially a collection of callbacks that are executed depending on certain conditions. So for example, with a parameter execute, I can write operator, and if I type dot, it means I'm referencing my parent. So I'm referencing container 1 here. And then I can ask on which parameters to execute. And my parameter, which I called run function, okay. And because it's a pulse parameter, I would say run this script on pulse. And in the dot itself, I can see that I have all these functions here. There is on value change on pulse. So if I turn on pulse on, then this function is executed whenever a pulse parameter is received. So now I can go in here and say parent, or actually I gave this container parent shortcut, my container, so I can say parent, my container dot promoted function, and it expects some kind of value in it. This works. And now if you button, this promoted function from a parameter. This works for other parameters as well. If I create a float parameter, for example, here, just a number. So now I float parameter, and I think if I want to run a script on on value change, for example, whenever the value here changes, the value change callback is being executed, and I can print out, for example, the parameter.
One question.
Yeah.
On the top right corner, operator dot. Is it the same like me.parent?
Yeah. Up dot is going one up. Yeah.
That is still referring the parent node.
Yeah, the parent node.
Right.
Exactly. Not just not as Python, but
okay.
as a string.
Next time I will type that.
Yes, that's always less typing. Parameters, you have variations for them. You make them. Yeah, you can digital parameters so that they can be changed. You can make them read-only, which is different from them being disabled. And you can organize them a little bit by turning on the section. So you can section parameters on a parameter page. That's good for organization. And for various parameters, you have different options. For example, you can define a range. So you can say this parameter should be not from 0 to 1, but from 0 to 10, or from -1 to 10. So now the range of this parameter is -1 to 10. With parameters, you can override. While you have a range, you can put -100 here, no problem. But you can also turn this behavior off by clamping the parameter. So now the parameter is clamped between 0 and 1, which doesn't make sense because it's -1 to 1, but fine, -1 to 10. Okay. Oops. Now it's clamped between -1. If I try to look, it always will clamp there, and 10. If I try to go above, it will always clamp. Other interesting parameters you can use. Section. So you can have menu parameters, and you can specify the labels and names of them. Yes, the parameter has, let's see, a dot par dot a selection dot menu. I think it's called menu labels. Yeah, menu labels, and then you would give it a list of strings. So item 1, orange, and then changed it to item 1 in orange.
So like in function,
Yeah, or even on a parameter change, if you have one parameter, you often have it in for device menus, especially if you select one then or a certain protocol, then the next new devices that support the change. So you could do the same. depending on what you're selecting, something else is being shown in the next menu.
And so on the value change, all that it doesn't have the current value. How could I get it? Is it just the parameter object and the previous value? Could I evaluate it directly from the latest value?
Sorry, again?
The value change, the first object, it doesn't have the current value usually instead. It just has like the last count.
It has the, on value change is the current and the previous.
And then what is the current? How can I access the current value?
Par.
So I need to par evaluate.
If you par is actually, it returns the value by default.
Because in the comment, like the par object is changed.
The par, so it's so par dot is it par dot val would give you definitely the par dot val would give you definitely the value.
Okay, thank you.
So if you call par though, it still outputs the still outputs the value. But you could do par dot name, and it would give you the name of the parameter that has changed. Same with previous.
Did you specify a specific parameter? Because you have multiple variables here. You have a float and you have a pause button. How does it know that the value is the float that changes?
Right. It doesn't. So if you if you have multiple floats here, like if I just add another one, another number, make this a float, add, and look at it here, then if I just output the value, basically, then here you get a value, and here you get also a value. You don't know what it is, but you could always say
its name dot its name equals then
correct. Name is another number. Yeah, it does smell like something. It's up.
Why brings a function of
Python 3.
the
The biggest change. It's the biggest change between 2 and 3. Yeah, so you can do that. Like you would check for the name of the parameter and do things depending on the name.
Yeah, actually, I never use the parameter execute. Sometimes I'm using the panel jar, or I call it directly. So say parent dot par dot my custom variable.
Right. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, both work. So just to we have the execute for parameters, and as I said, other things that can help you. There is the execute which you can run on start or on exit, or you have various on device change. You plug some device in, or it's being unplugged. You could run a little script if you need to do that.
What is onCreate in this case?
Sorry?
What is onCreate in this case?
Create. That's actually a good question.
What is created?
What is created? Yeah.
Is it, because I mean,
I have no clue. Print what? Cannot be an operator. Nope. I have no clue. I have to look that up.
Maybe on the start.
Or if a project is created.
or it could be, I don't know, this replicate, if you inside clone and you replicate that clone, then it's created.
No, there's no execute for that. There's a, yeah. Yeah, for creating operators and watching changes in networks, you would have an execute, where you can check for cooking, if it's being deleted, any changes. For containers, if children have changed. Create. That's weird. It says create method is executed when the node is created.
Well, it is maybe saved in a top component or something, and then we...
I just don't understand what the reason would be.
On start is when hashtagon is start.
Yeah. If you create the node itself.
If you know itself, that's kind of impossible thing to do.
Maybe you got a link, another node.
Well, anyway.
It's not.
Somebody needed it, so it was added. So yeah, you would basically run a lot of these scripts from execute operators. Similar, very important one is the panel execute. Like if you click buttons or something like that, then you would use the panel execute to run script. You find also, you will find callbacks in things like MIDI events. That's a good thing to. Because I wanted to cover that as well, at least partially. We'll just pretend that this is a MIDI device because I have Touch OSC installed on my iPad, and you can run the you can basically do you guys know Touch? Yeah.
You can also have a device on the table.
Oh yeah, it's fine. This works well. This so much here. There is a Touch OSC bridge. The Touch OSC bridge allows you to connect your iPad via wire, via USB, and then it shows up in Windows as a MIDI device. Now, to add MIDI devices in Touch Designer, you go to Dialogs, and then there's a MIDI device mapper. And once that's loaded, you can check for new MIDI devices, create a new mapping, and then select your in-device. And for me now, the Touch OSC bridge shows up, which would be any kind of MIDI device. And we can try that's archive or something. Yeah, we can try that later. And you can specify an out device as well. And then you have in the dialog already these options to see in messages and out messages. So I have a little perform interface here, and if I move a slider, I basically get the MIDI messages in. So it's fairly simple like that. Now, I have different ways of accessing those events. One way would be, and I tend more and more to use it this way, one way is that I get these MIDI messages in via this MIDI event chat, and I actually script my way through it, and then just control different sliders. The other way though, and it's nice and simple as well, is to use a MIDI in chop. And the MIDI in chop, whenever I control a new slider or something, a new control here, it comes in with the MIDI channel and yeah, control change or note or whatever you're actually sending. So nice and simple basically. From here you could take things and let's just select out and control here and export it onto rectangle size in pixels. I just gotta figure out, oh yeah. So you basically can control anything then quickly with MIDI. There is something you gotta watch out for. If you're using the MIDI in chop, the problem becomes that, copy Control D. Now let's make another rectangle where we control a different axis there. Okay. So the problem becomes, and if you watch these wires here, you can always tell if operators are cooking or not. Oh, I need to select something else. 2. Yeah. So you can see, despite me just changing the first rectangle, this here is cooking as well, although nothing is changing. And this can quickly become a problem because you move one MIDI slider and everything starts cooking. And there's a slight, I wouldn't call it a feature, well, but it might be a feature. The null chop is another good reason why to always export from a null chop. The null chop has the option to say, to turn cooking to selective, which means it will only cook by the default setting here if the value actually changes. So having said that, now the rectangle 2 is not cooking anymore when I change the first one. Rectangle 1 is not cooking anymore if I change the second one. So that's a way to prevent these massive cooks.
So much stuff to know. I mean, I guess there was also quite a big performance gap when I did my performance back then because I didn't know about stuff like this. And
right.
Everything controlled with million LSD.
Yeah, and then it starts going crazy. Yeah, it's also one reason why I basically started using the DATs and scripted it, just so that I can totally circumvent this cooking issue. But obviously this is a nicer way of working when you have chops and you can export or you can reference the chops.
And this might be some of my issues I have with my designer network right now. If you have some time this afternoon, I would just like to ask you to have a look over it. Maybe to
we should do that.
save some components there and there.
Yeah.
This is great.
How do you build the interface for the OSC? Can you specify, can you build it on my computer and then deploy it to tablet or some external or how do you
This thing? There's an app somewhere. Where do I have it? Right here. There's an editor that comes from you can download from the website. So you just pay for the iPad or for the device app, and then these are all free. And it's a default editor where you can
or you create your app in Unity or something like this.
yeah, and then
How do I send it to the tablet? Is it just a file that is loaded?
so for sending it to the tablet, you actually have to be on the same wireless network, and then there's a sync option here. And then here you would go to, I'm not sure, I don't think they're on the same one now, but
Yeah, so
layout, add, and it would show up.
I didn't know about the touch only users, so I always brought my own wireless LAN network, even though I had my
Oh,
iPad
right,
on
yeah.
the table. I don't know, maybe it didn't exist
Super,
back then.
super handy.
That's
I hope it didn't exist.
yeah.
I
Quite a
created,
pain to always bring my router.
Your wireless network and then depend on it. Yeah.
I created a drawing application on a wall, and you have this Leap Motion controller. You do with your hand, but the problem that is, if you lift your pen, you should not draw anymore. Sometimes you want to decide, do you want to draw or don't you want to draw? It's like lifting the pen and putting it down again. So what I did is just a couple of here with one single button, a huge button, and any time I push the button with the smartphone, I had it on the other hand, I didn't even look at the smartphone, and then I drew. That's a good purpose for using TigerOS.
Works really well, yeah. So just to prove a concept here, this should work out of the if I connect the APC here, that should install automatically inside for Windows, and then it should show up, but it doesn't. Boo. Does it get installed?
Actually, media intro.
Oh no, I need the device first. Device manager. Let's see. Does it show up here? I don't know. I can always forget where these MIDI devices show up actually. Nope, doesn't show up. Anyway, we'll figure that out later.
I maybe experienced with the SEC30 that you should switch it on before you start Touch Designer.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's it. Although we do have this MIDI device, check MIDI devices. Oh, there it is. Okay, so it comes in as the APC40, and then just as before, like usually all the MIDI devices you just connect and they show up, and then you can select them from the in-device. So, yeah, fairly simple. it works the same way. Put that away again. Other devices come in just the same, just similarly. So, close this again. I will just close touch here for a second and bring up and install the Leap Motion 2 SDK. Extract. And remove the 4 SDK. Pause this. Reason for that is we have the Leap Motion, the 4, the Orion or whatever it's called, is in the experimental build, while 2 is in the official. So if you're using the official build, then you would have to install the version 2 SDK. This is taking a surprising amount of time. Maybe while that's going, we can just go over the Kinect, because that's also a good device. Okay, so a lot of devices in Touch Designer come in natively. In a way, you don't have to do much for them to show up. They come in various ways. For example, the Kinect has a couple of different cameras and returns certain, and it detects a skeleton. So what you get from it is, or what you will find, is that there's a Kinect top, and the Kinect top being the one that returns the depth image, or the color camera, or the raw depth. Actually, yeah, not even sure. The infrared image, as well as the player index, if it detects players, and the color point cloud. The color point cloud, as well as the color image we worked with yesterday. And the other thing you get from the Kinect is the Kinect shop. And the Kinect shop actually returns all the joint positions. So it's a very, it's fairly direct. Like, you don't have to do much guesswork, essentially. Besides, in the Kinect shop, you can see all the other things that you can get. There's a certain amount of interactions that it returns. I think there's only a couple left in the Kinect 2, like open hand, closed hand, lasso, and the confidence channel. yeah, and then a bunch of values for bone rotations, bone length, as well as positions in the color space, so screen space positions for your skeleton, and depth space, phase tracking, and a couple status channels. Sorry? I think, I'm not sure if it's up to 6. I mean, the slider goes to 6. I'm not sure actually how far the Kinect 2 goes, whatever Microsoft supports. So we're using the Microsoft SDK for it, not the NUI-Track or anything. Is it called NUI-Track? Anyway, not any outside libraries, but the Microsoft SDK, and therefore we support whatever they support. And a good thing what you can do with the Kinect actually is it's posted on the forum, and I added it also to the day 3 folder in the it's actually the only file in the day 3 folder here. Is something that the Kinect calibration routine, a little operator that helps you with calibrating a Kinect to a projector. So what does it do? We basically have a look at the color image and the depth map, and we have a projector, and the projector can be used to. And what you want to do basically is you want to use the Kinect to detect a skeleton, and then you want to use the projector and project onto that person. Now, the position of the projector and of your Kinect are usually different from each other. So now what you got to figure out is how different are they? What's the relation of your projector to your Kinect, so that in Touch Designer you can place a camera at the position of the projector and render therefore something. If you place a rectangle on somebody's head or something like this, you want to render that from the position of the projector. So this little component helps you figure out exactly that procedure. And yeah, we can try this out here. Just need a spot to put the projector fairly safely. Yes. Very nice. So the first thing you would have to do with this is select the output monitor, and for me this is the projector here. So output monitor 1, and it sets the resolution by itself, and then it gets a grid, and you want to open up this checkerboard, and maybe we want to focus this a little bit. And then you want to make sure that the Kinect basically sees the checkerboard, and you get a little white board here, something. I didn't come with 2 projectors. And essentially, maybe Jan, can I ask you to hold? So what you want to do is I'm in the way. So the Kinect is looking at this image here and is trying to find the checkerboard now. So it looks like we might have to make it a little brighter and scale it a little bit, and then we can try if the Kinect can, if not the Kinect, if an OpenCV function is basically now able to detect the grid in the picture. So I click get point pair, and it found those points despite pretty badly. Maybe can we come a little bit closer? Nice. That's perfect. Yeah. And make it a little bit bigger. And reset this. Get point pair. And then you basically change the direction of the, like if you rotate the, so we always would need to see the whole grid on the board. Yeah. Or maybe you do it this way. See, because I can still see that, yeah. Jan, wenn du ein bisschen nach links gehst, oder ich hab's jetzt genau, ein bisschen mehr nach links.
Nur dann auf die grünen Punkte oder auf
Nee,
Checkerboard?
das Checkerboard hier auf dem weißen drauf ist.
Okay, alles klar.
Und dann müssen wir mal so und mal so und mal so. Also in verschiedenen Positionen sozusagen. Okay. Warte, wenn das jetzt erstmal halten. Okay. Okay, klasse. Get point pair. Das hat er nicht gekriegt. Und dann muss man, you have to then adjust the contrast a little bit and play around with a good setting. There we go. Und jetzt ein bisschen in eine andere, also einfach das, ja, ein bisschen rotieren sozusagen. Aber immer wenn du von vorne guckst, dann siehst du es wahrscheinlich am besten. Okay, und dann halten aber, also ich muss dann immer, so you have to hold it in a position. Wait. Okay. Get point pair. Andere Position. Einfach ein bisschen rotieren. Okay. Oh, nee, zu viel. Muss über das Ganze drauf sein.
Stop.
Get point pair. Und noch eine andere Position. Ja, stopp. Und mal ein bisschen links, rechts rotieren. Also so, ja, genau. Das hat er jetzt nicht gekriegt. Eine andere Position. Okay. Ja. Gucken. Okay. Und noch eine. So, ja. Okay, probieren wir mal. Let's see if it can calibrate with those. After collecting a couple point pairs, you essentially click calibrate, and it was not successful. Or maybe it was. Open point cloud. No. Let's see what it found. Good, kind of, but not good enough. Yeah, let's try that again. We need the projector to do a better projector.
Can you work with this projector?
If we,
Well, it's hard because you want to
but so we can sit on this side and project this, or maybe project what we want to see.
Let's try that again. Reset.
Passt schon.
Weil theoretisch müssten wir es sehen. Du kannst auch ein bisschen näher kommen sonst noch. Genau, ja, klasse. Du kannst ja auch von vorne drauf gucken, musst ja nicht dahinter stehen. Sondern...
Jetzt sehe ich es auch.
Genau. Jetzt müssen wir nur... Wir müssten halt immer das ganze Grid drauf haben. Genau. Und dann halten, wenn das passt. Weil dann muss ich, also wenn es dann drauf ist, muss man es dann kalibrieren. So you wait for a moment when the grid is on, you basically get the point pair, which it couldn't get. Ein bisschen näher vielleicht. Genau, ja. Okay, let's try that. No, it's really bad. Wow. Is that the native resolution of the projector? Is 1280 by 720? Maybe so.
I think it's 1920 by 1080.
1280 by 800. Okay. I think it's 1280 by 800. That's what it has as native. Just we'll just have to try a little harder.
Is it component in the palette as well, or is it?
It's on the forum. Yeah, I haven't added it to the palette yet.
What's the name of the component?
It's called Connect Calibrate. Connect Calibration, yeah.
Cool.
So, well, maybe rotate it a little bit. Okay, thank you. No. That won't get it. No.
But I mean, it's a lot of still light and
Yeah.
reflecting.
I wonder if we can... I mean, maybe the other idea could be that we just do it on this projector here. We'll shut off this one for a second. And here.
I can make it like this for the moment before we go.
Okay. Right. Let's do that.
You are native.
Perfect. So you can come a little bit closer.
Closer to the edge.
Yeah. Just also so that yeah, great. Okay, so I'll scale the grid up a little bit.
Is there like some little purpose?
Yes. That's cool.
Okay. Reset, get point pair. That looks better. And now if you rotate it like this. Ja, also immer nur so ein bisschen. So, ist gut. Ach so, warte mal, das sieht ja so auch so aus, als ob der das richtig abschneidet irgendwie.
Es wird halt, da ist halt nicht das ganze Projektbild drauf, ne?
Ja, eben. Warte mal, halten. Ja.
Vielleicht stelle ich auch meine Hand. Das geht auch wieder nicht.
Nee, die Hand stört eigentlich nicht. Muss nur Genau, einfach näher rankommen.
Ja.
Und dann immer irgendwie so. Get point pair. Okay. Und jetzt so. Genau. Get point pair. Und jetzt so. Klasse. Get point pair. Und noch vielleicht mal so. Ja. Get point pair. Und noch eins. Das machen wir mal so hier. Basically, you collect a couple point pairs that you need to then hopefully calibrate the whole thing. And I do have to check though. I have this. It feels like that. Where's my checkerboard? Checkerboard. I wonder if this projector has a funny setting because it's not filling the screen completely. Maybe. Wie bitte?
Also wenn es kalibriert ist, dann darf man den Beamer und die Mac auf jeden Fall bewegen.
So ist es, genau. Ich sehe nur hier, das Bild ist wesentlich größer als der, als ob er hier so ein 4x3 oder so da rein will. Oh, genau. Da ist es. Aspect-Ratio. Oh. Thank you. Okay. That's the other issue is if you do adjustments on the projector like keystoning and anything that messes with the pixels, all these calibrations don't work anymore. So we'll have to do that again.
Kommt auch noch dazu, dass das ganze Ding nicht ganz gerade ist, sondern ein bisschen gebogen ist.
No, none of that matters basically because all it's looking for is the grid.
Okay.
So what's happening is basically you specify a grid and you tell there's some OpenTV functions running in the background and you tell it, okay, you've got a grid with 5 times 8 checkerboards or something like that. And now, or corners, and now what OpenTV does, it looks in the camera image and tries to find that grid because it knows what it's looking for. So it can find it, and so you collect 1 point pair, and then you basically move it a little bit, and collect another point pair. Oh, aber immer. Genau, dann stillhalten. Alles klar. Dankeschön. Get point pair und jetzt eine andere Position. Oh, das ist zu viel. Andere Richtung.
Ich weiß nicht mehr, was ich mache, weil er nicht mehr projiziert ist.
Genau, kannst du. So, klasse. Get point pair. Oh, das hat nicht funktioniert. Nochmal. Level anpassen. Ne, probieren wir mal eine andere Position. So. Klasse. Und ja, das ist auch gut. Okay. Und so. Wie viel haben wir denn? 5? Ne, machen wir noch eine. Okay, klasse. Und jetzt Calibrate. Sage mal. It doesn't want to calibrate today. It should be though. It's not that bad. Let's see. Eigentlich nicht, nee. Kann nur sein, dass der Fehler zu groß ist. Show Point Cloud now. Ah, nee, ist ganz schön schlecht. Theoretically, you should have theoretically, we now what it basically tried to attempt is to now render the point cloud from the view of the projector, so that if you have a skeleton, for example, and not a point cloud, that if I step inside of the projector, so that well, it's not too bad. So basically, when it detects the skeleton, that it can render the skeleton onto the person. That's the idea. And theoretically, if I hold something in here, the point cloud should also match up with it. And now it depends on how precise the calculation is, etc. So you want to have it set up. What I did on purpose now is that I placed the projector pretty randomly and placed it Kinect pretty randomly. In a real world, you would try to either place them fairly close together or things like that. But it is actually not too bad. Like, it's grabbing my skeleton pretty well. So the idea now would be that you go in and you place. Well, you could actually even use the. Let's close this. Close the point cloud. And let's close this. So what this gives you now is essentially you have a camera. This is just a camera component with a lot of insights. And so now what I can do is I can take, I can get my Kinect shop, and I can select some elements from the head, for example. So I have a TXY, XYZ for the head, and I take let's give me a box and geometry. Okay. And I export the positions of the head onto the geometry. And I render the whole thing. Maybe I light it. And as the camera now, you specify your Kinect camera. And then you output that onto the projector, which is 1280 by 800. This is monitor 2, I believe. Let's have a window. And now I'm going to see. Do I get a Sorry? Let's try it if it actually is on. Yeah. Okay. Sorry?
You haven't applied performance here, but it shouldn't matter, I guess.
Yeah, that shouldn't matter. Let's make it maybe a little bit smaller. The box. Maybe the box was just way too big. No.
Did you disable to show the skeleton?
Now it's showing up in the left bottom corner of the viewer.
It's weird, yeah. Where is it?
It is mirrored, right?
It looks mirrored, yeah. But it shouldn't matter with the Jan maybe can use that.
Oh, it's tracking Jan's layer. Because then I have one layer and it tracks Jan's layer. In the view.
So I do see it in the light. I see it here too.
Oh, there it was for a second. I saw something.
So it goes in the wrong way?
There it is.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
it's showing. I can see it there.
like on top of your head.
It's more than
Why is it doing that?
Kannst du nicht halten.
Weil, okay, emit. Does that help? Brauche nicht die Pappe, aber eigentlich nur deinen Kopf. Das hat er gerade nicht.
Ja, leg die Pappe mal weg, sonst sieht die direkt deinen Kopf nicht.
Oh, yeah, yes, okay.
I didn't have it. I didn't have the light on it. Like there was no light on it, so now I just added.
But it's like really accurate for the way it was like for not the like optimal circumstances.
Yeah, it's fairly good for like.
For being shitty.
And you see you have problems with delays, and you have to be fairly careful with that.
Can you get it very non-latency?
No, that's the latency. Yeah, that's the latency from the Kinect basically. You can't get around that.
Could we reduce it anyway, like improve the cables or something?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay.
It's mostly because the Kinect does all the processing, and then it just takes that time.
And for state of the art dense performance stuff where they track sensors, what do they use there? Because I mean there are some projects that have it very spot on.
Yeah, low latency tracking would be done with something like Blacktrack. Yeah, like a proper tracking systems. Yeah.
But this is access to the pipeline to like motion capture in almost real time to pipe it out in some other programs. Is there any way? Because in trends that where I'm thinking about it, like in Blender or Maya, in anything to get real time motion capture, but it's almost impossible and you do it here in 10 minutes. So
Right.
Oh, we have object tracking, right?
yeah, but we're going for a budget version to get the Kinect on the laptop and go anywhere.
I wonder if you could write out in a format, like because I mean you get all the channels,
Yeah.
and you would have to figure out what format you need it in,
Yeah.
and you could just stream it basically as any kind of data.
Yeah, with like a mouse, for example, would be enough to create IK handles or something like that.
Right. Yeah, you'd let's see. Select star T. Just get the and then shuffle every sequence every third channel. So you have the full skeleton basically as separate channels, and now it depends what format the
program wants to receive.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you could format that into anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be entirely possible. I don't know how the input is possible in Blender or Maya, for example, to get the real life feed, but
Yeah.
the data this generates is exactly what would be needed because it just translates better in 3D.
Yeah.
Like crazy, and you create the null for every bone you want to have, and then you map bones on the null, and that's
Mhm.
about it.
then if you get the data from, like, I don't know, you can send it out via any pipeline, TCP, IP, UDP, OSC. So this is a fairly, simple way of mapping. And it works well. So if you do this in a full space, if you want to map a bigger space, because the accuracy of the mapping changes with distance. So if you want to get a good calibration, you want to actually move around the space with the whiteboard, and then just close this here. So in the calibration, what you can do, if you project the checkerboard here, you can move the checkerboard around and change its size as well. So if you're on a stage, you basically would do the back of the stage and extreme corners and some in the front more to grab as much of the space as possible, so that the calibration is correct for most of the space. And so just for who's interested in this, the inside of the whole thing is essentially, again, there's an extension here. It's called Calibrate, and when you look at it, it also tells you a little bit that when you deal with Python in Touch Designer, you can import any kind of library that's available to you from Python installations. We have included most of these things, or all of NumPy CV2 is included in Touch Designer, so you can just call them natively. You don't have to import them from external sources. If you need libraries that are not delivered with Touch Designer, in the Preferences dialog, you can actually set a module path, a Python 64-bit module path. So you basically point to your local installation of Python where you installed other libraries, and you can fetch those then. It fetches those then from there.
Also libraries from Titan 3.7 and your Python installation?
Yeah, so exactly. If I don't even know if I have Python on here. I might not. But if I had Python installed here, and I would have a library installed in that Python, then I could reference the path to Python here, to my local Python installation. And then any library that's installed there, I can actually access from within Touch Designer. And that's in Preferences. Now, with some projects, you want to make them movable, like you want to take it from one computer to another, and you cannot move the Python installation with it. So what we did before, and this works pretty well, is to just install it in your Python environment, and then add it into your installation or your project folder, like make a libraries folder or something like this with the side packages in it, and then run when you run the just add this libraries folder to your system path when you first start the project. So it adds it to the system path, but it's only temporary, and then it's being removed again after. So this way you can make it a more portable approach. So if we look at this extension here, it's kind of a nice example of an extension with all its different functions. Here you can see how it finds corners with CV2, OpenCV, find chessboard corners. Here you can see that. And you also can kind of see that while this is a lot of text essentially, it is fairly simple to use OpenCV, and it's kind of fun to use inside a Python environment, despite it not being very performant in the Python environment. But it's good to play around. So yeah, the whole calibrate camera is literally there's like one short call to actually calibrate the camera, and the rest deals with changing the matrices, how it's received from OpenCV into something can be understood by Touch Designer. So in that same space as Kinect calibration, there's another tool in here which is called CamSnapper. And CamSnapper works, it literally works the same way. It also presents itself as a camera component. And what it does though is you assume that you have a model of the thing that you want to project onto. So for example, a cube. And then you open up CamSnapper and you reference that model as a geometry. So you have that as a you have a box, for example, that you want to project onto, and you reference that box on the GeoSop. And CamSnapper, you find CamSnapper in the palette under Tools. So very simple. And then you open up CamSnapper, and you have a little interface where you can control. If you hit Control on your keyboard and press the mouse, you can rotate the model that you have here, that you referenced here. And then you open up the output monitor, which would be your projector. Probably should close the Kinect here. Close checkerboard so that I can open up the CamSnapper output monitor. Okay. And now what you do basically, let's imagine that we have a box there that looks exactly like the box that we have here on our screen. I would be selecting the points of the box that I can see, that the projector can see. So I would be selecting this point here, for example. And now I would be aligning. I don't see it. But
And that happens when open output.
Yeah, open output, exactly. And now I would be aligning point 0 from the box, from my virtual box model, with the same point on my real world box there. So this would be here, for example. And I select another point, and I can align this over here now. Maybe it's, and you can use your mouse either to drag it, or you can use the cursor keys to move it, or hit Control and cursor and it jumps bigger spots. And you do this a couple of times. Until you have about 5 points selected or aligned. And again, it depends a little bit. What. How precise your model is, and how many points you have selected. And eventually, basically, the projection lines up with the box. So after approximately 5 points, 6 points, you should have a match between your model and the real world model. So you can select in this model here, you can select corner points, you can select along edges, but you also can select points on the model itself. So sometimes if you, for example, have a car, you don't have necessarily very good edge points. Like it's very rounded nowadays, so you don't have corners and stuff like that. But you usually have things on that you can identify on the paint maybe. So then it's useful to pick points that are not edges or corners, but that are on the surface. And you can remove those points if you don't find them very useful. Just right-click on them and they're being removed. Yeah, so that should be fairly simple. And I mean, we can do this here quickly. This is going to be a very rough one, but I do have somewhere here a ruler so I can measure quickly this box. So this is 15 by 14 by 9. So I'll make my box 15, 14, 9. Okay. Very nice. So remove all of these points. Or just hit reset here. Here. And now we'll point the projector. I mean, even if we hold it for a second, maybe, or yeah. You can also move the box. So. Prima. Ja. Solange nicht fällt. Okay, so I've got one point here, which I need to align. Maybe we can focus it a little bit. Okay. That's okay. I can move it.
Will it track also the object and then move it and how they can follow it?
This object.
Yeah.
Well, you could calibrate multiple of these things to each other. Yes.
Multiple each thing.
Like you want to basically track the box.
Instead of using the checkerboard, use points on the object and then
track those.
and then track
Oh, to those. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's the same principle basically as this, just with a checkerboard. So you would have to collect with the connector. It is that you would have to collect multiple of the same points.
Okay.
So you could take anything and repeatedly select the points in the image space of the Kinect. Does that make sense?
Like select the points and then take them. Yeah, like take them and
yeah. So what you would do is, if you would have the Kinect, just as a quick So the main thing is between, doesn't want to work right now, I think because the, see, connect, color, and connect color point cloud. So let's say you don't want to use the checkerboard but something else. Then what you would basically do is, okay, if you wanted to track the ruler, you would select those points in the color image, and you would get the positions of where those corners of the ruler are in the color image. And then you would have to read at the same position, at the same UV where you selected these points in the color image. You basically collect the depth information in the point cloud. And this this information then you pass on to the calibrate camera function. And you do this for various different positions. And then it could figure out, oh, okay, I now know the different positions in space, and I can tell you where the, well, actually no, you don't get anything from that, because you need the projector for it.
You need the projector to see it and to have a relative position to project.
Yeah, so the idea would be what I just told you doesn't really make sense, because what we would have been trying right now is calibrate the color camera to the depth camera, but they're already calibrated. You need to project something so that you can project, so that you can calibrate the projector onto the. So you cannot just do it with some object.
I need the position and like the position of the two edges, for example, and the ruling edges, and then I have to project something. Like if I insert these 2 points in various positions, and then I can track the object, then afterwards I can also project them, right?
Yeah, like you can absolutely project, if you can track the object in some way, then you can project onto it, since you know the position of the, so that's the other idea. Maybe it's best to explain with this one here. If, and we saw that, so let's say, I'm just going to finish this here quickly, and where's my mouse? There it is. I click here somewhere. So if I put 5 points or something like this, here and there. Okay. No. This is a funny problem. If you try to move it to the left, that's also a shortcut key in Touch Designer to pause the timeline. If you hit the left cursor key. Where is it? There? Okay. Great. And another one
Wo klickst du eigentlich immer hin, wenn du außerhalb vom Display?
Auf die Projektion.
Okay.
Ja.
Ja, super.
I'm up here, and I'll choose this one back there.
Bisschen links.
Well, it's a pretty extreme angle here. So I'm just going to add another corner.
Und das geht mit beliebigen 3D-Dateien.
Perfekt.
Ja,
Also die können auch sehr viel komplexer sein
genau.
und mit sehr viel mehr Punkten.
Ja, ja. It has been.
noch weiß, welcher Punkt zu welchem Punkt auf dem eigentlichen Bild gehört.
Yeah, that's why you also can click on surfaces. You don't necessarily have to select the point, but it has been tested on buildings and stuff like that, so fairly complex models. Yeah. And so now you see that it kind of lines up, and if I attach a material to the whole thing, just for quickly showing that it's actually a box, we do have a little box map here. Okay, and apply this as a color map, then now you see that it should be lining up fairly well for, again, kind of an extreme test, like a very close proximity with not very well measured and consistently sized object. So yeah. And the same thing, and this is basically the same idea now. Now it's got my camera here. I can close the output, close CamSnapper, and I just have this camera and can use it in my render setup to project onto anything. Well, and while we have this set up, I just quickly show again the idea of Kantan mapper here. Oh, so CamSnapper basically would be something where you have a model and you have you're putting textures onto that model, like you have it. It's fully. You have all the texture coordinates, something like that, and now you do stuff with the model itself or on the model. You basically get a camera, and now you do anything inside that
So you have
space.
your shader and your UV map, and then it should be mapped automatically?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And the third approach for mapping that can be used is basically this Kantan mapper here that we looked at earlier already. And the idea of this whole thing is that open as a separate window. It follows the same idea as we just had. You have an output screen and you have your canvas, and now you want to map each side of this box. So you can see that where I'm with my mouse, it shows me also on the projector where I am currently. And now I can drag a rectangle here. And obviously this is not a rectangle on the box, so I can take these corners and just match these corners here, like that. And then I create another rectangle. And I know that this won't fit properly, but I can basically, well, where is it? Here. Put it here, probably here.
So will it give you a top input for each surface, or?
Yeah, exactly. You get, and then the next step would be, where is it? Oh, here. Now. I don't even know. It's hard to tell.
Not John. No.
Yeah, now I don't know.
And then just move the cube down.
Like there, probably. And it must be here somewhere.
Oh, and this blink, 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 blink.
Yeah, a little more.
Another blink.
Gutes Stück weiter.
Like it was okay in the beginning.
Weiter, 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 weiter.
Ja,
Stopp, bisschen hoch jetzt. Stopp.
And a bit to the right again.
Ja,
like a
passt
little
schon.
bit. Yeah.
Ist ja nur eine Demo.
And this one,
Left, a little bit left, a little more. Some more, some more, some more. Yeah,
More stop.
that's it.
Und
Ja.
jetzt kannst du den oberen Punkt auch ein bisschen noch verändern.
Exakt.
nice. And we rebuild the box. So, and now the idea would be, that you have your textures or whatever, like little movie clips or animations, and now attention, some of the UI is a little bit counterintuitive here, but anyway. So let's add a movie, and I can add movies now to these sides here. So there's a texture option here, so I can add the movie to the box, and there's a texture option for this one, so I can add the banana on this side, and perhaps add the oil drums on the top. And I should see now, like, all these things. And now you see that there is certain issues here. For example, maybe the aspect ratio is not quite correct of the texture or something like that. So what you can do now is you can edit the texture as well. So there's a little button here, edit texture. And what this is, basically, you can either crop out parts, like what part will be shown on this side. So with this, you kind of select the cropping area. So I can just, now only this part here in the middle is shown. And yeah, you can also rotate the textures if you want to, flip it, or if it's a grid that you're drawing, you also have the possibility of warping it. And you've got little you can add rows and columns as well. You see the offset between mouse cursor and red line. I can never remember, maybe I should fix it, because I can never remember, is it the red line or is it the cursor where it actually puts the next row? Let's see. Okay, it's the red line. So orient yourself by the red line, and it's going to add another.
I think that's always. You don't have to change it.
So it was only
It's just,
texture in real life.
yeah, basically a little bit like that, yeah. So you have fairly nice controls over that. And you have things like, you can soft edge the whole thing, and have control over how this soft edge should look like. And once you're done with that, you also have the option to do irregular shapes with the freeform tool here that I showed to you earlier. So this could theoretically, you could use this as a masking tool, for example, by just making it black. And now, yeah, I see there, like, you basically create a mask.
And we just drew on it and we created the mask.
Sorry?
We just drew on it and you created the mask.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, here's the same. You've got also the soft edge. I can turn on the soft edge. but not with this. Funny, I have to apply texture to it. Okay, so I can apply texture to it. Another movie. And this could be anything, right? This could be your animations or yeah. Oh, ooh, really? Uniform works. Oh, right. Yeah, no. Interesting. So you have soft edge on that thing as well. But another nice thing is if you select the Bezier soft edge on this, then you actually have this soft edge transform tool here. And now what you can do is you can basically create the mask as another map. So you can be more precise with your map, essentially, with your soft edge.
I don't want to know how you did all that.
Too much time.
Must be crazy. Everything is up and that and stuff.
This seems to be an issue here that shouldn't happen. Oh, I guess it could, yeah. So, yeah, you've got quite a bit of control. I do have to warn, though, that because it's a side project, it's not my main profession. It has bugs and oddities, so I would even say if you have tools that you're mapping usually with that have similar functionality that are made by people who spend their whole lives doing that, then I would recommend using those tools. But if you find yourself in a position where you quickly have to do something like that with Kantan Mapper, then Kantan Mapper works fine. Just you will get frustrated with it eventually.
So it wasn't commissioned by Limited, it was your personal thing?
No, I did this at work basically.
Yeah.
But
I think it's like quite a crucial part of design being used by the rest.
yeah, a lot of people do use it. It's just that it really needs, theoretically, it's a full-time position to just develop on that, and obviously that's not given. So, yeah.
But CamSnapper works.
CamSnapper works, no problems. Yeah, CamSnapper, also the Connect toolkit, that's all, like that just works as it should. It's just the complexity of this one that.
I mean, if you want to do stuff like this, you can use Redis anyway. So
Yeah,
it doesn't
exactly.
work, okay.
Right, you have funny things here actually, like some nice things. Like you have things like, well, that you would expect, changing the pivot. Then if you can't remember, is it if you hold Shift? No. Control? No. Control Shift? No. Alt? Maybe? Yes. It creates basically copies when you transform it. So if you would create a triangle and you position the pivot on this edge, on this corner here, and now you can create those kind of things fairly easily. Anyway, I think that's all the mapping tools we have included. There's also, I should mention, there's a corner, an edge blend here somewhere. Oh, projector blend. Right, a projector blend component which basically allows you to blend projectors that are assigned in an array with vast controls over how the edges are blended, etc. And on the Pro licenses, we do have support for the Vioso software. which is an automatic blending, an automatic mapping and blending software. So you would have multiple projectors, you point them onto the object that you want to project onto, and you have, it basically runs a little gray code pattern or something like that, and then it figures out the blends and the color correction between the projectors so that you get a smooth blend. And they are based in Germany. They're from Weimar originally, but now I think they're in Düsseldorf or something. And they have pretty good pricing, like it's actually attainable. And then there's another one here, Scalable Display, which is an American company. They do a similar thing for high quality and unfortunately extremely expensive. But these Vioso guys, they're actually, like, you can talk to them. They're pretty supportive.
Or you do the functionality that they have in touch design itself.
Or you do that, which should be possible because you can make a gray code pattern, you can read it in.
You can like film with the camera, check the color.
Yeah. Yeah.
It should be better, I guess.
You can do that too. It's a good project.
Yeah, just make a Vioso.
Yeah.
Native Vioso top.
Top, exactly. Yeah. Any questions on that? Or
Did you say that the project file will be connect where we match everything? Oh, it's going to be there. Yeah. Can you upload that too?
sure, yeah, I'll do that.
I could not see the day3 folder inside the Dropbox.
Oh, I can reshare.
You didn't even, okay.
Yeah. I think I deleted the Connect.
What are you going to do after the break? C++?
Oh, right. Or we can, I mean, we have another 15 minutes. I don't know if you want to look at that quickly.
Yeah.
It's a quick one. I'll just show you the, first I'll save this into day 3. Mapping, calibration, overview. Okay. So yeah, that's one quick. It's a quick one. If you install the experimental, which I still would tell you to do because it's more fun, what you will see in there. What you will find in this experimental version once it loads. If you open up the upgrade dialog, it looks a little bit different, and it's going to change much more actually. The upgrade dialog is going to change quite a bit from what it is right now. The first change that you will see is that there is another column in the components, which is now titled, there's a dynamics column. So you have rigid body physics with bullet in there. So it's something to play around with. It's not, it's fun. Let's put it this way. It's a starting point. And the other thing you will find is this custom operator thing. And those are what previously was C++ or C++ operators. All of them can now be found under this custom tab, and they behave like native operators. So they come in with their own. You don't anymore have to specify a DLL or anything. They just come in as native operators with their own parameters and everything. And there is one in specific that was of interest, which is this flex operator. And I should say that if you want to see them show up in your in the upgrade dialog, then they have to be placed under documents, derivatives, plugins. So here you see there's the FlexJob DLL, and it comes with a couple other DLLs that are necessary for it to run. But it's basically under your user documents, derivative plugins. There's another place on the Mac, but custom operators. Yeah, if you look on the wiki for custom operators, then there's also instructions on where to place them, etc. So, and this one for specifically, actually I should just share this, because I think this is all that you need. You don't need to install anything else. So if I just share, I'll share this onto the Dropbox. If you open up this one specifically, it's quite fun because GitHub, FlexJob. It's built by the guy Vincent Houzé, who on the first day I showed you this Google I/O, all the liquid stuff, the big projection. So this project he put onto GitHub, or a subsection of this, and it's a good starting point if you want to go that direction, and if you want to play around with things like that, basically. So a little bit more advanced from what we did yesterday with particles. More in the direction of fluids, basically. And the network is not too bad, actually. It's just a couple of like defining these operators, these objects that are interacting with the system, and there is just basic shading here. There's nothing specific, nothing outrageous. All of it sits literally in the FlexJob, which you can control just like anything else with the parameters that it comes with. So
these are particles and the FlexJob controls the position channels, or how the rough?
Yeah, so it's instanced as well, and what you get back is basically all these channels for TXT, YTV, and I guess this is velocity channels as well, and this is being instanced here. He instanced it. It seems to be the same thing that we did yesterday with the particles.
The pipe is kind of like a batch of particles, because you have each particle needs to be its unique instance, I guess. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the.
Depends how he built it. Yeah. Like he's doing more transforms there, but it would be worthwhile checking out. You probably could do it any way you like, basically. But so this is a fun project to kind of explore and play around with a couple options. And if you get it from GitHub, then you can also all the source code that comes with it. So if you like to program C++, then here you've got a good starting point for such a fluid system. I don't know. My C++ is very limited. Yeah, I'll put this folder also. I can copy the toe. Yeah. So I guess there's not much more to say about this. It's fairly self-explanatory because you've got a couple emitting, like you've got an emitter where it all comes out of, and you've got a box and another box that kind of are in the way of everything, and this is all then, yeah, you have your emitters that you specify here and your collision objects that are on another parameter page, and then you can play around with it. Okay, maybe lunch?
Ja? Super cool. Danke.
Sure, and then we would maybe look at some projects or
I have many
questions.
questions, for example.
Yeah, we'll do that.